nerds, what's up? Today's video is going to be my March wrap-up. Let's just get right on into this. I'm gonna be honest, I did not have the best reading month in March, but like, this month was crazy. April is also insane, and May, I get married at the very beginning of May. I don't promise that these two coming up months are gonna be good either, reading-wise, because my brain like cannot slow down enough to just like relax because I'm like constantly thinking about all the things I need to get done. And March happened to be my best friend's wedding at the very end of the month. It was my birthday. There was lots of stuff happening. We had just gotten done with a bachelorette party. We started planning my bachelorette party and bridal shower. So like I said, this beginning of this whole entire year is just back-to-back craziness. But with that being said, I still read 5 books and I did start a 6th, and that one will be rolling over into my TBR, so we will talk about that in both of those. I had 8 books on my TBR and I ended up reading 5 of them. Did I do the best? Again, no. But I ended up reading, as far as like what I read, they were all pretty good. I read 1 3-star book, 2 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. So 2 5s, 2 4s, 1 3. I feel like that is a great reading month. I read 3 adult novels and 2 young adults, so we're getting a little bit same with the still going about half and half on YA versus adult, which is exactly where I want to be. I read 2 contemporaries, 1 fantasy, 1 nonfiction, and 1 that I placed in dystopian personally, and we will talk about that later. And then I read 3 books physically and I read 2 books on audiobook. In total, I read 2,132 pages. So again, this was my lowest page count month so far this year, but last month I read 8 books and I only read 400 more pages. Those are my stats for the month of March. Now let's get into what I read. First off, I did read an arc, and it is The Last Voyage of Blythe. I was sent this unsolicited by Penguin Teen, so thank you very much, Penguin, for sending me this. This book is the one that I put in dystopian because I think that that's better than, it's technically claimed as fantasy, and I don't think it's fantasy. I think if anything, it's maybe a little bit of sci-fi. It's definitely like dystopian feeling, and then it's very steampunk. Those are the 3 places I would say that it is. So this follows a girl named Blythe, and a few years before our story starts, she was on one of the barges that goes out for this dystopian city that's kind of the only one around, and they go out on the river and get gold. And no one really knows where the gold is going or what purpose it's used for, because it's not like their city is full of riches. 3 years ago, she was on one of those ships. It was ransacked by raiders, and the love of her life was also on the ship, and he was murdered. So she is out for revenge in our story, and she goes on the first voyage she's been on since. This book, like, it was just fine. It was steampunk, which also isn't just my favorite thing. So if you like steampunk, maybe it would feel more new, but to me it's just like, oh, this is another steampunk book, like, great. I also felt that the development wasn't quite there enough for me to believe. One, that she was so intent on her revenge plot, but then also there's like a switch of feelings type thing that happens at some point in this book without giving away spoilers, and I just didn't believe that either. I don't know, it was just fine. It was just nothing spectacular in my opinion. Moving to my next 4-star book, Princess and the Fangirl by Ashley Poston. This is also an arc. This comes out on April 2nd. So it actually comes out the day that I'm filming this, which is a couple days before you're gonna see this. So it is out now in the world when you're watching. This is the like companion sequel to Geekerella by Ashley Poston, which was a 5-star book. This one was very close to perfect, but there was a little bit something missing when it comes to like especially comparing it to Geekerella. When I first read Geekerella, I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and so this time I was expecting to love it, and I think maybe I hyped it up a little bit too much in my mind. But Geekerella follows a girl and a boy who are kind of accidentally texting each other, and they don't know who they're texting, and the girl is the daughter of the man who created this giant con for this essentially like fake version of Star Trek that exists in our contemporary fiction, and the boy is the actor who has taken the role in the remake. And she doesn't like him as an actor, but they've never met before and stuff. And so it's all about, you know, this romance that ensues when they don't really know who each other are. And this one is about the female main character of this remake of this Star Trek version of reality. And she is like a raging bitch and hates the series that she's a part of, and she just wants to be like a real actress. And she's always talking about how like this was just like the start, but she's like terrified that she'll end up being cast all the time as this same character that she really dislikes. And then they Popper, because it's a Princess and a Pauper remake, is a huge fangirl of the series and wants to save her character from being written off the story, and etc, etc. And they end up switching places at the con, and the story ensues from there. These stories, like, if you have any experience going to any sort of con, it doesn't matter what kind. My only experience going to a con is VidCon, which is different than like a Comic-Con thing, and it does feel like a little bit more like it would be closer to what Comic-Con would feel like, but I've never been, so I can't say. Like, any of that experience, like, you will feel it in these. It gave me some serious nostalgia reading the first one and this one. If you're any sort of into like fandoms, these are books for you. I absolutely enjoyed it. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it was very close, and I really, really love it. They're just so easy and so cute. Okay, and my other 4-star book of the month was the Sassy Book Club pick for March, which was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. Wow, I'm still surprised that Chelsea from Chelsea Dolly Reads, which is my co-host, wanted this on the poll. That was her decision because she does not do fantasy, and it ended up winning. We have a live show up. It was on Chelsea's channel this month, so I will link that in the cards. I think it's on this side. Me, Chelsea, Murphy from Murphy Napier, and Julie from Pages and Pens were all in that live show, and it was a great time. This book is an adult fantasy, I would say urban fantasy novel. It's kind of like a historical fiction urban fantasy setting, and it's about this group of boys, young men, and they're these like thieves who just go on these like giant thieving quests, and then of course they get involved with politics and stuff like that, and shit goes down and it's crazy. There is some magic involved, but it's not high fantasy. It's kind of just like sprinkled in there a little bit. The characters of this book are fucking hilarious. I absolutely love every single one of our main group of boys, young men, in this story. They are amazing. You get flashbacks of how they met and stuff in this book. I listened to it on audiobook, which I don't actually recommend necessarily. I think it was probably a little bit detrimental to my enjoyment of it listening to it, just because it's a long book and there is some fantastical elements, and it's adult, so like some of the storytelling I just was missing, I think. But wow, it was so good. Such an enjoyable ride. It is a little bit sad. There are parts that made me cry and shock and but I have 2 5-star reads of this month, and wow, they are both extremely powerful books. The first is a non-fiction, and it is Always Running by Louis Rodriguez. This was my TBR jar pick for the month. This is a non-fiction novel, which is always hard to rate because how do you rate somebody's life? But I think that Louis Rodriguez, who also narrated the audiobook himself, and that's what I listened to, his story is just, it hurts to listen to it. This book has like a very long list of trigger warnings. I wrote what I could catch as what I would put as trigger warnings in my Goodreads review, so that'll be linked. My Goodreads is always linked down below. So I would go in with caution, try to look that up first if you're sensitive to really any sort of content, because this is like a whole realm of everything. But basically, Louis Rodriguez lived in East LA. Now I'm questioning if it was East. I want to say it was East LA, and he grew up in gang-ridden areas, and he was part of one, and yeah, it's just about his life, how he survived being a part of gangs and surrounded by different gangs, and also how he got out of the life. Whew, it's powerful. It is a rough one, so be prepared with that one. Then I also have another powerful book, but this one's a fiction, and it is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. This book has been so hyped for me for quite some time now. Murphy from Murphy Napier talks about it a lot. That's where I first heard about it, but Chelsea from Chelsea Dolly Reads also loves this book. just a lot of people that I trust their reviews of have loved this book, so I knew going into it that I was going to love it, and I ended up annotating it a little bit. The writing of this is amazing, like the style, but also the story I think is really important. So if for those of you who haven't heard about Beartown yet, this is about a town in, I want to say it's in Sweden, and it's about this small town where everything economically is kind of going downhill, and the one thing this town has left is hockey, and so they like praise the hockey people, these teenagers, and let them get away with basically everything. And it's about how this entire town that praises all of these hockey kids react when one of the hockey kids is accused of raping a girl who is also part of the hockey life, because everyone is in Beartown. And it just, all of the ways that everyone reacts to this, and it was so good. Woo! I'm emotional just thinking about it. Definitely a huge caution, trigger warning for rape. It is explicit in this book. It's rough, and there's also other trigger warnings too, which I also put in my Goodreads review of this because it doesn't just involve that one thing. It's amazing, and that is that. So those are the 5 books that I read and finished in the month of March. I also started Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is part of the Daughter of Smoke and Bone read along, which is hashtag DOSAB read along on Twitter, and it's at there as well. Me, Chloe from Books with Chloe, Red from Little Red Reader, and Kaz from Little Book Owl are all buddy reading this, and we will be having live shows. Saturday, April 13th is going to be the live show for this at 7 p.m. PST on April 13th. So come join us. The first book's live show is on Catriona's channel, so I'll link all of them down below. I will talk about my April book for this, which, if you can guess, is the sequel in my TBR. But yeah, that's that. Unfortunately, I did not get to my Goodreads pick from you guys. You guys always vote every month for a book to read, and this month you guys picked Feminists Don't Wear Pink, and I just did not make it, but it is at my library waiting for me, so I will be picking that up in April. So yeah, keep an eye out for my April TBR for the rest of my... I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Make sure to comment down below what your favorite book you read in March was, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate it. I am so close to 8,000 subscribers. Please get me there. It would mean the world to me. And yeah, I will see you guys very soon with a new one. Bye!